Well, some new information on a major diplomatic development. Cuba is now officially off the U.S. State Department's list of state sponsors of terrorism. Today's announcement from the State Department paves the way for full diplomatic ties and the opening of embassies as well between the United States and Cuba. The president announced plans more than a month ago to remove Cuba from the list, and Fox News is learning that there's been growing bipartisan support for the renewed relations. Our chief Washington correspondent, James Rosen, is live in Washington with more on this. James?
Jenna, good afternoon. The official removal of Cuba from the State Department's list of nations that sponsor terrorism earlier today ends a residency for the Castro regime on that blacklist that began 33 years ago. To challenge this aspect of the Obama administration's historic shift of Cuba policy, part of a broader reestablishment of diplomatic ties with the communist island that is 90 miles from our shores, Congress had a 45-day window, and that expired today. To qualify for delisting, Cuba had to be found not to have provided any support for terrorism over the preceding 6 months, and the Castro regime had to provide written assurances that it will not do so going forward. However, a number of terrorists, as well as an estimated 70 fugitives from American justice, are believed to be living freely in Cuba, including a man thought to be involved in a notorious bombing of a tavern in downtown Manhattan in 1975 that killed 4 innocent people and injured 50 others, a bombing carried out by the domestic terrorist group FALN, which advocated Puerto Rican independence. Also living in Cuba is Joanne Chesimard, a.k.a. Assata Shakur, a self-styled black revolutionary who was convicted of killing a New Jersey state trooper in 1973 and later escaped from prison. However, Washington's desire for Chesimard and the other fugitives to be returned to U.S. custody was kept separate from the decision to delist Cuba from the terrorism list.
The United States sees these as separate processes. The review of Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terror was instructed by the president, and we have had a separate process of discussions with the Cuban government about reestablishing diplomatic relations and reopening embassies.
Ongoing talks between U.S. and Cuban delegations have failed to reach an accord on all points of the so-called normalization of diplomatic relations, but a further announcement about the reopening of embassies in each capital is expected soon, possibly, Jenna, as early as next week.
Wow. James, thank you.
You bet.